Welcome to the Data Strategist podcast. And today, my guest is a gentleman called Dave Parr. Now, Dave is the founder of a company called ENGI.AI. And we talk really through what his journey was building up to creating that company. Talks a little bit about the company itself and what it represents and what it's doing for the energy industry. We go through sort of some of the scary bits about what setting up a company like this is and how a lot of people talk about the success, and what me and Dave sort of focused on a little bit about the risk versus the reward, sort of how scary is it making that leap into that. We talk a little bit about data ethics as well around AI, because he's built an AI company and ethics plays a part into that. And then a little bit of a cheeky question at the end around R and Python. It's a really great podcast. Dave's a fantastic guy, and I think anyone who's interested in sort of building their own product or building an AI based company and thinking about data ethics, this is a really good podcast for you to watch. So, hope you enjoy. And thanks very much for Dave for taking part. So, thanks, Dave, for coming on. And welcome to the Data Strategist podcast. This is episode number 2. And over to you, really, because obviously I know who you are. But do you want to introduce yourself to the millions and millions of people that are going to be watching this podcast?
Absolutely. Hi, millions of people that are watching this podcast.
Yes.
My name is Dave, and I am the founder of the company ENGI.AI, and I live in Cardiff. And yeah, that's good enough for now.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, it's probably a good segue straight into where do you sort of begin your data career? What were you? Where are you now? And we'll move on to what NGAI is. But
Sure.
where did Dave Parr begin his data career?
Yeah. So I began my data career accidentally when I began my other career. I actually began a career as an energy manager, doing energy efficiency consultancy work for industry. And I discovered while I was doing that job that I was pretty good at doing numbers and Excel and stuff like that, and that was great. But also, I found that I was becoming quite good at building tools that other people used. So it used to be in the consultancy that I was in that each energy efficiency consultancy person had their own folder, and they just had custom tools they'd built for each client, and they all sort of diverged really, really fast. And then they ended up with some errors and things like that, and some problems in the calculations, and someone inherited something from someone else, and it became pretty chaotic while I was there. And I found that my tools were getting reused the most. So that led me to building more tools. And so the company I was at, which was RUM at the time, Remote Utilities Monitoring and Management, up in
Nice.
Estremaddock, we were the people there that ran the company sort of observed this, and they gave me the opportunity to focus more on building tools than on direct client relations.
Okay.
So that led into building and programming stuff for other people
So
because
all of that beforehand was in Excel, I
yeah, it
presume,
was
and you're
all in
probably
Excel.
picking up
We were
like
doing
VBA.
Yeah, no, it was all Excel. And then the question of VBA came in, and we were building things like LED conversion calculators. So if you're having incandescent bulbs and fluorescents, you get energy efficient if you become LEDs. And this was 10 years ago when that was pretty current. And these calculations were getting pretty big, and Excel was juddering, and I was
Mm,
quite good at it. It wasn't juddering because I was writing it bad. It was juddering because it was just straight up too much. So I was able to talk to a few friends that I had outside of the company, and they happened to be data scientists, and
okay.
they spent some time with me. It was really easy sell. It went, "Hey, I have this problem with Excel," and their response was, "Do you want to learn programming in a pub?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll take that."
That's yeah. I think anybody
uh,
would, Dave.
it's a good trick. It's a good trick. It works for a lot of people, and thus became a lifetime of staring at compiler errors and bug messages.
So
And
what
yeah,
was the first language then that you were taught after that, or you
so
picked up?
yeah, I learned R, which is Python's weird little data science cousin. Python being a general purpose language that happens to be really good at data science. R is a data science language that barely does the other things. Um, and that was really useful for quite a while. I then joined you. We worked together in Sorensen Media for quite a while, and that was actually the first exposure I had to real programming, really, because I'd been sitting on my own, just smashing out code, going, "It runs!" Clap.
Yeah.
And then I was able to learn a lot from you and our colleagues at Sorensen Media about how to actually put this into something that's production worthy, that scales well, that can be maintained, that can be tested and iterated upon, and that kind of stuff. And that was the start of it, really, was that transition and the lead up to that transition into that job.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah, I think, but you also had SQL skills as well. Let's not underplay that. You know how to write SQL as
Yeah,
well. You
yeah.
had R. You were like the R guru, I called you for a while, because you knew literally everything about R, and we're building dashboards and shiny apps in R. And I was like, what the hell is this? Where's this come from? But yeah, it was. Yeah, I do remember you as the R guru.
Yeah,
And you set up sort of. You were also helping other people, right? Teach You're teaching other
yeah.
people to code as well. So you're kind of like giving back to sort of building a community in Cardiff. So
Yeah.
what was it? It was called R. It was just called
It
R
was
Thursdays, wasn't it?
the yeah, it was so it was there was our user group on Thursdays, which was the weekly pub meeting, which was a group of about 6 or 7 of us, that came from all different backgrounds. So some of us were like me, sort of weirdly half and half inside programming and not programming. Other
Yeah.
people were quite deeply into doing data science as their job with art, and other people were sort of academics or students who sort of drifted in, and it was a nice little diverse regular community. And then we started doing Satar days, which were R focused local data science conferences for a day. And we would pull in a speaker list. We'd run these events usually in the university. They'd be attended by sort of between 70 and 130 people, depending on which year we did it, at least in Cardiff. But the fun thing about that was it was all community based, but it was also sort of global in a different way, in that there were
Yeah.
quite a few different groups working on this framework together across a lot of different countries. So the first Satar days was actually in Budapest. No, South Africa. Sorry, John. South Africa got there first, didn't they? And then Budapest. I can't remember the order. What either John or Gergo, if they see this, is going to be angry at me. And then Cardiff was third. And the nice thing about that was, well, the sad thing about that was that COVID killed that for obvious reasons. The whole idea of locally getting together and sharing a keyboard obviously became a health issue.
Yeah.
So we stopped doing those. And one of the things that happened recently actually was the R consortium got in touch with me and some of the other people who had the keys to that system, because what we did was we built a kind of conference website promotion system in a box. We said,
Okay.
here is the template, here is the branded assets, here's what you need to tell people, here's your code of conduct, here is how you integrate this into ticketing systems and call for papers systems. And all you do is you take this thing, you fork it, that becomes yours. That repository is now the one for Budapest or the one for Chicago or the one for LA. And then we will host that for you, but you get to put your brand on that and your stamp on that. And that was really kicking off. So if 2020 had happened, we think that there would have been about 20 conferences, on one on every continent at least, over the course of 2020, if 2020 had happened the way everyone had thought it would.
Oh
And
wow.
the R consortium noticed this, and they were obviously there from the start as well. They donated money to the first sort of set of conferences we did, and I handed the project back to them in January this year. So they've sort of taken back ownership of trying to put this conference system together after COVID. So if this does strike anyone as really, really interesting, the Saturdays repos still exist. The people there should be maintaining them. So if you fancy putting an R conference together in your local city, then there's a toolkit for you that should still be live and maintained.
You ever thought about doing it again? Thinking, why not give it another go?
Yeah, I have. I talked this over with my co-conspirator, a friend of mine called Paul Brennan, who was instrumental, as well as a couple of others, Dominic, Sefa, on putting these together in Cardiff. But a lot of us have sort of changed what we're doing and what our lives are like. So
Yeah.
Dom's gone off to Cambridge and then London. Sefa's taken on quite an intense job doing data science somewhere else. Paul's family is sort of growing, and he wants to spend more time with them. And so at that point, we sort of said, we won't drive it But if someone wants
Yeah.
to take it on in Cardiff, like, come get in touch because we can hand it over and give some guidance and put some intros together. So if anyone wants to do that in Cardiff, reach
There you
out.
have it. That's an offer
Yeah.
that not many people should refuse. Listening from the R guru. Get that. Get it going again. I think they're really good. I think, you know, getting people together, especially after COVID, right? It's been a weird couple of years for
Yeah.
these sorts of scenarios. And I think it would be good to see these things back. So, you know, like your R Thursdays, for example, would be great to come back. I'm not telling you to do it, Dave, but can you do it, Dave?
You know what?
Bring it
You
back,
should.
Dave.
I happen to know who your next guest is, and you should mention this to him as well because what I have been doing since COVID is I've been working with your next guest, who I'm going to retain the mystery for. It's a big
Yeah,
reveal.
yeah. It is a big.
But we we have succeeded at putting on some stuff post COVID, smaller stuff, one or two things in an evening. And NGI actually sponsored a hackathon as well, in Cardiff. I think we did that in March. So we did an open source project where we had data about cats. So cats had GPS collars on, and that sort of gave some telemetry about where the cat was. And this data
I
set was
love
opened up.
these. I absolutely love these. These are great. These are so good. Just so out of the box. Just coders being coders, right? Just
Yeah.
tell you what, let's get GPSs on cats. That's what the world needs right now.
It is.
Let's do it.
It's really, really important to work out what a cat's doing when you can't see it. I mean, it could be in a box, it could not be in a box. It's like the reverse of the quantum state. But the outcome of this was that we ran a small event, a small hackathon in Cardiff. NGAI were the sponsors for that event, and we did that with PyData Cardiff. And that was a nice event. We open sourced that, and we're thinking about doing another one soon. So there is still stuff happening in the city about this. And also, just
Good.
while we're on community, AI Wales are also operating as well. They're a great organization too. So yeah, Cardiff AI meetup scene is alive after COVID killed it.
Nice. That's good. That's good to know, right? These things do exist, and some people, you know, sometimes you just forget that they're there. Especially after the few years we've had, most people used to go to them, but kind of forgot that they exist, and
Yeah,
you'd kind of lose that vibe for going again because it was like a regular thing. Every Thursday, people would go, or you know, the
yeah.
Cloud Native Wales was one. I think that's the one
Cloud
that's
native.
transformed into
Yeah,
AI Wales, isn't it? So I think people just forget that they're there, and
yeah,
they are really good events. Plus, usually they're free beer and
yeah,
pizza. You
yeah.
know, they are good events.
They are.
So you mentioned it a few times now, NGAI.
Yeah.
Let's, you know, what is it? Give us the big, give me the big rundown on it, Dave.
Uh, so NGAI is the AI platform for net zero. And net zero, for people who might be coming in from more of a data science background, net zero is a pretty big movement in UK, and also obviously in other countries too, to do with decarbonising our energy grid, decarbonising our homes, having more energy efficient operation of our businesses. And what NGAI does to fit into this puzzle of tons and tons of other companies is it accelerates the transition to energy efficient building operation by providing plug and play models to solve common problems that can be integrated into existing software. So similar to Rum, when I was working there, what I've found throughout the rest of my career is that I'd go to one sustainability company, I'd go to another sustainability company, and the question would be, how do we solve this problem? And the answer is, it's already solved. We don't need to do a huge amount of work. You just need to know it's there. And
Mm,
they go, well, we don't have the IP, that we don't control it. And it's like, you don't really control it anyway. Like, if it's already solved, it's already open sourced. Off you
yeah.
go. And so what NGI does to sort of facilitate this is it says, if you have a startup in net zero, if you're trying to build a home automation IoT system, or if you're trying to get a virtual power plant
Mm,
software off the ground, or if you're trying to do benchmarking between different states of operation of a building or different homes in a group of things, those are all relatively solved problems that either you can task your data science people to research, code up, productionize, and then maintain for you, but fundamentally they're not solving anything new. They probably know how to do that, and if they don't know how to do it already, they'll find the ways that other people have done it in the past and just rebuild things from scratch. And so what this means is that if you have a piece of software that needs those functions, you don't need to hire a data science team. You can
Mm.
use ENGI.AI to just accelerate and then put your business proposal, put your business logic, put your value proposition on top of that knowledge. And then similarly, if you do have a data science team, they can get on with solving novel problems. They can work on the large language models that you might need to process through the classification of your products into carbon buckets or something like that. That's a novel problem. That's a non-trivial problem. And rebuilding the same problem with in each company is inefficient in my mind, and that's what
Yeah, you're
NGI is
right.
doing.
That's a great idea. I think you are right. I think a lot of people try to solve the same problem. Well, if there's already one solution, why not? And then I think the key point you just mentioned there is, why would you have your data scientist? Why would you spend your most expensive, potentially your most expensive resource on
Mm.
something that an app already does?
Yeah.
Why are they not solving more complex problems? Because you've got the resource available.
Mm.
It is about just efficient spending as well, right? And efficient resources. So why not do it if there's an efficient app that's already there, built, tested? You know, yeah, I think it's a great idea. Um,
Cheers.
yeah, it's just well,
I thought it
very
was pretty
impressive.
good when I thought it up randomly in this very room. Yeah.
I think it's good though, because you've come full circle in your career though as well, right? Started out as an energy sort of efficiency manager, learned
Yeah.
how to code and do all these things, and then come back as being another energy efficiency manager, but with a product. It's kind of a full circle, Dave. That's what I'm going to call you from now on. Uh,
It does feel like the hero's journey, like the old sort of like model of telling stories is like, I discovered a whole new world of programming, great. And then you step into like the hell of going, oh my God, what the hell is this? Like, why do I need to know two languages? Oh my God, what is this database error? I've come all the way back around it. I was like, I don't even care about that anymore. I'm like Neo in the Matrix, just like, yeah, repelling carbon molecules with my mind.
yeah.
No, for anyone listening with no context, that sounds really, really crazy. That was a joke.
I'm pretty sure people. Well, I'm hoping people would take that as a joke, Dave. I don't think you are somebody out of the Matrix. That would be a bit random. We only work in data, not
Yeah,
movies. But
yeah.
so I guess what made you sort of um start the company? I think we all have these sorts of ideas. We all sort of like play around and put apps together. Or what? What was the motive behind it? What gave you that sort of, I can do this. Let's go for it.
I think there was a sort of like a couple of things that happened simultaneously that sort of pushed me over into this one. The first was that we had the energy crisis of sort of cost and carbon coming up over 2020, 21, 22. And, in the UK, we had our prices just sort of skyrocket through the roof, and the government went, oh, well, we need to subsidize this because those people are basically going to go bankrupt. And that subsidy has been there for a few years now, but the idea is that's going away next year. So that makes this a more important problem for people's pockets. The other one is that there is a lot of movement in the clean tech space right now. So there's a lot of people looking at this domain and this real world problem and going, what's my contribution? And so those people are going to need tools to do that. And if I can accelerate them getting their tools to get to their goal of decarbonizing fish meal plants or making their school operate more efficiently, then great. Like, take it and go. That's benefit for everyone. And the other one was my wife. I I was smashing through my phone and I was just like looking at something in particular. And she was like, "What are you looking at?" And I was like, "I'm looking to see if someone's built the thing yet." And she knows what the thing is. And I've been looking for a long time because I'm sure that some other people had done it. And at the point at which I was doing that for the third or fourth time, she's like, just go and do it. Just go and build the thing. Get it out of your system, but also make it work because there's two side effects here. There's either you don't do it and no one ever does it, and it's either a bad idea or it fails, or it's not valuable. But then the other one is someone does do it and it actually turns out to be really valuable. It wasn't you. Like
Yeah.
you need to have a crack at doing this because you'll feel worse either way if it doesn't happen. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's probably a really true statement, right? That if somebody else built it, how would you feel? The fear of missing out, the FOMO of it,
yeah,
is kind of, that's kind of a real thing. And I guess that kind of leads on to, I 100% believe that you're going to be successful with this, Dave. You've got the right attitude and you're kind of I know you'll do well. You wouldn't put yourself into this position without doing well at it, and you know you've got the right sort of skill set. I know that. But let's talk a little bit about how scary it is to set up something like this, because you're going out into sort of the wilderness, right? You don't know how people, like you just said, you don't know whether it's going to succeed or not succeed, and you don't know how people are going to really take to this sort of idea,
Yeah.
you know,
Uh,
and that, how scary is that? Because a lot of people talk about how great things are, like, oh yeah, I made £1 million yesterday, sort of thing, but we never really talk about how terrifying it is to step out onto your own and do your own thing. So I was just wondering if
yeah.
you're okay to share with it,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, how
absolutely.
scary this was.
It was very scary. I also need to acknowledge for a second that I am able to do this. Data science is well paid. I've been in that for a while. I was able to put away some money to get me through this process. I've not sort of staked everything on it and sold my house. It's, there's a certain level of
Yeah.
security that makes that a lot less scary than it could be. But then the other side of that is it is scary that I don't have a paycheck right now. I don't have anyone telling me that something's necessarily like a great idea. I don't have anyone really to even learn off of because I don't have a co-founder right now. It's me. I am the whole thing at this point. And that's a lot of responsibility to take on. But luckily, there are ways of getting through that. And one of the ways that I found really useful was we have a Tramshed Tech in Cardiff, which is a small incubator, and they have lots of levels of programs and support for people entering this field. And so if you are worried about doing things, or if you sort of like, how do I even go about starting? Look out for places like that. If you're in Bristol, the Engine Shed is another one. I'm sure you'll be able to find one in most major cities in the UK because of actually some of the government support that exists to keep people like this going. But the other thing that's quite scary about it is that daily I have to set my own goals. I have to work out what's worth doing, and I routinely look at what I'd done for maybe 2 or 3 days, and I look back at what I've really achieved, and I go, "That was a terrible idea." And that's actually the scariest thing was
Yeah, yeah.
is the retrospective, like, kind of couple of hours or days worth of time spent, and you go, "That was that was really stupid." I mean, I couldn't have told that was stupid before, but the scariest thing is that I've just spent some time
But that's
wasting
an
my
interesting
time.
point, though. That is a really interesting point because agile teaches you to fail fast, right?
Yeah.
So you fail fast and then you move on. You're okay. They never look at it and go, "Oh shit, I failed at that. That cost me 3 days worth of money." Oh, so you've kind of got this like weird sort of conundrum in your own mind, right? Where you can't
Yeah.
fail because you don't generate revenue, but if you don't fail, you won't be able to generate revenue. So it's
I'll tell you
oh,
what,
that
I've
is
been in
a
some
nasty
retros, man,
conundrum.
but the retros we have at NGAI between me are absolutely brutal.
And I bet they're really long as well, aren't they? They just like they
Oh,
go on for days.
huge. It's huge. There's so
Always in a
many.
pub. I hear it's always in a pub, your retro. I don't know why.
That we were lucky enough to be in a culture where that suited us both. But yeah, it's I
Um,
think that's the scariest part of it is you can get over those hurdles and you find ways through those hurdles and there are solutions, but then you just find more hurdles and they get smaller and they get more specific. But the scary thing is the self accountability, I think. Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It
The
definitely takes the type of mindset, and I honestly, I'm not just saying this because you came on my podcast, but I truly think you've got that right. You've got that right mindset to make this succeed. You know, I remember when you set up the first Saturday, the R Saturdays. I can't remember what you call it, the Saturdays, not the
Yeah,
band,
the
the R for the R
the
of
other
the group,
Saturdays, the one
and
spelt slightly awkwardly. Yeah.
yeah, and the amount of concentration and time that took to do that, you really excelled there, and I thought I was
Yeah.
you definitely showed the right sort of mindset to get this sort of thing over the line. So yeah,
Thanks. Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome, man. It is good.
Thanks. And that's one of the things that I'd like to bring up about getting over the scariness as well, is that doing Saturdays, changing career from energy efficiency into programming, doing this, I'm lucky, but also apparently sufficiently good at doing it that I can usually find people to work with me on the goal. And with Saturdays, I did a chunk of it, and acknowledged, like, earlier, like, because, sorry, for those who don't have any context, Stu was my manager at the point at which I was doing I was doing some of this community stuff, and I'd say, Stu, I'd like to do this, and he was really good about giving the support, and there's like a section of time to go do that. And I was able to then use that with people like Paul and Dom and Sefa and Steph to then build that out, and that was great. And that's the thing to get over the scariness as well, as if you can find the right kind of support to
Yeah.
get you through that point is also really useful. One of the things I haven't found the right support for, just scary things, is business, like business knowledge, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
I am a
yeah,
programmer who has started a company and it has some products, it's getting some users on it, some people are interested. But it's still early days. The company's about 6 months old at this point. And the things that I'm learning through my support network are really interesting. But there's other things that I'm learning about that is like SEIS and EIS, things that I had no concept of before. And I'm
yeah,
not giving things like that enough attention right now, because I don't have a business founder next to me right now.
yeah, yeah. Well, if anyone's listening out there, and the millions and millions of people who really want to change the way energy works, then give Dave a
Yeah,
call. He's looking for a
yeah,
business co-founder. Let's make it happen, Dave. Let's
I
get
am.
someone in.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
that kind of that kind of leads me quite nicely on to the next thing I want to talk about, which is, do you now class yourself as a data scientist first and then entrepreneur second, or is it? I think you just kind of answered it a little bit, but I think you're kind of an entrepreneur now, Dave. You kind of moved
yeah.
away from being a data science Dave. You are now
I
entrepreneur Dave.
I can corroborate that because yesterday I went to Bristol and it wasn't for a tech meetup like that I was coding at. In fact, that's a slight lie. There was a tech meetup right at the end of the day, but I spent most of the day just having meetings with people and answering emails, and it literally took a full work day to do those meetings plus the emails of other stuff and plus doing user support and things like that. And there was no programming done that day, and that made me
Yeah.
sad in a way because I I love my terminal, but at the same time it's what needed doing. And so yeah, it's I the question is, do you class yourself as a data scientist first and entrepreneur second? And I do still. I spend probably too much time worrying about the data science and the programming that I probably should be, compared to what my responsibilities actually are in this company. And yeah, sorry, investors. I'm technical.
There's nothing wrong with that, right? There is nothing wrong with a technical leader in a company, and it is just about getting that right network around you and the right people. And going to places like Tramshed, they really do sort of support people to get that sort of business context, and it is a good sort of incentive. And I think as you grow, you'll bring in more business skills as you grow, right? It's not a you need to have 20 people working for you straight off the bat, right?
Yeah,
It's not viable. But
yeah.
yeah,
But it
it's
also won't be me forever.
well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not just yeah, that's great. So yeah, I still see you as data science Dave. Then that's what
yeah.
you will be
That's
henceforth known, and
that's reasonable.
that's what you're going to
Yeah.
be.
You'll find me. Put it this way: you'll find me more likely doing a talk at a programming conference than you will me being at like a business schmoozing trade event, right? Like
Like a
the
product
odds of seeing me
management
on a stage
event.
on either side is far more related to doing something at PyCon than I am going to be at Innovation Zero, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right, nice. So obviously you're working in AI,
Mm,
right? Or you're working in that sort of end space anyway. And what I kind of think about now when we talk about AI, it's kind of a hot topic at the moment, but what about data ethics, like overfitting algorithms or sort of bias in algorithms,
yeah.
or, you know, what happens with data ethics when it comes to AI? I would just love to hear your sort of thoughts on that.
Data ethics in AI has the conversation in that has moved as fast as the definition of the AI has for like the last 2 or 3 years. And so
Yeah.
eh, there's when before ChatGPT, we were correctly talking about ethics in AI to do with how we deal with multiculturalism inside these models that are biased towards a certain culture. How do we deal with diverse sexual identities when we deal with data that is passed into a model and that data is biased towards people of a certain sexuality? And that is a problem, and I don't think that's really a solved problem right now. But we now have very different ethic problems in the last year that we have to deal with, and it's been sort of interesting that shift as ChatGPT and Llama and all these large models and stable diffusion large image models is it's become something far different. And ethics in AI now also encompasses what we should be passing to a computer versus a creative or a human. Is AI art? Is
Mm.
is this job that has sort of provided you income that may actually literally be replaced by an AI that can do that job? Say copywriting, for instance. Copywriting is used to be an industry and probably still is an industry, but there is a lot of issues there when I can ask an AI model to produce me copy for my website and blog faster than I can actually get in touch with a real human. Like that's actually disruptive at a very different level of ethics, which is this is a salary for a person. This
Yeah.
is how they actually work. This is what they need to go on. This is really what they hopefully care about and they're passionate about. Like I hope they like their career. Like I'd like that to be a case, but at the same time, those careers are being very rapidly eroded, and programmers are also having that as well. We're replacing ourselves
Yeah,
sort of
I think
fast.
that we're coming into that age of disbursement, right? Where people are just going to have to change jobs, and the
Mm,
adage is that people who use AI are going to replace you, not necessarily AI itself. It's people
mm,
like us, really. People in the data field are going to start replacing people who don't. But I think what I'm hoping, and in my utopia that we live in, is that we actually move people away from doing mundane jobs and
yeah,
moving them into more people focused roles, because we've lost that connection in this crazy world, right? Especially with COVID, we've lost that like intimate connection with people. And if AI can stop us from doing these back office tasks, I think that would be amazing, as long as we just don't get rid of people and see that as a bottom line. Oh great, we've just saved 10 FTE. That would be horrendous. Like you said, all these industries are just going to disappear.
yeah,
Where do they go? Well, why don't we just create new industries that allow people to move into better roles that focus on people and society, making society better? Like
yeah.
that's how I see it. But I think, yeah, it's pretty
I
scary when you talk about copywriters though, because
yeah,
they are being decimated at a pretty fast rate, and
yeah.
anybody can be a copywriter now, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing in my mind. I think, yeah,
I've utilized it. I mean,
yeah,
I've had marketing emails to write, I've had blurbs to do, I've had chunks of website copy to make, and I've been doing that with AI, partly because it gives me some understanding of what these systems can do. Because due to what I'm working on for work for NGI's product, large language models aren't a huge part of that. They there are ways that they might be in the future, but fundamentally we're talking about a different sort of class of machine learning in that way. And there are sort of large language models now that can do a lot of, I don't know. Let me rephrase what I was aiming for clarity. There are ways that large language models are going to disrupt the normal operation of business and earning a salary and earning a wage. And one of the things that I like about the current breed of AI versus the older breed of AI, but also cryptocurrencies and things like that, is those older eras and different technologies when cryptocurrency was just spiking because of massive insider trading and some really crazy bookkeeping, and when Timnit Gebru and her team were challenging Google about their AI, which was a little bit before Bard. The challenge had to come from outside of that industry. So there had to be a external pressure that held the people making these models to account. And what's happening more with these large language models as an ethical scenario is that people like Sam Altman and the other sort of leaders of these large language model teams are actually actively going to governments and saying, this will become an increasing problem. We already have been working on this problem. We need you to engage with us now, because the
yeah,
problems are emerging, but they haven't hit a crisis point. Unlike, the collapse of FTX or something like that, and Binance, when like the legislators had to get involved because everything had already happened. What these people are doing, these leaders are doing, is they're saying, if you can get on with this now, if you can maybe further the conversation about universal basic income, if you can increase the rate at which you have career changing services available for your population, if you can understand where the risks of hallucination and forgery are coming from, then you
Mm.
can cope with those. And we are here with you before it's the biggest issue in the world to make it ideally not the biggest issue in the world. And the other thing that I like about ethics, and I often have a conversation with other people in sort of my sphere, is what's going to get us first? Is it going to be climate change or robots? Like, are we going to have Skynet or are we going to have children of men? What's going to be the first thing that actually is the problem for us as a society? And it's going to be climate
Yeah.
change potentially first, because climate change is already at that tipping point of crisis, whereas Skynet is potentially not going to like say it's not a thing. Like, there is a lot of stuff happening here. Like, I was using Claude AI, which is a new thing from Anthropic a couple of days ago. It's phenomenal what it can do. Like, Chat GPT, don't care. Claude all the way. But it's not yet at the point where it's scaring me in terms of existential threat. It could, but it isn't. Whereas things that do scare me in terms of existential threat is highest like 7 consecutive days on record. You know,
Yeah.
average temperature increase, biodiversity loss, right? That's actually the sort of the burning problem right now, like quite literally. And that's the other ethics thing that we have with this, which is these large language models, they cost a vast amount of carbon to train, like criminally large amounts. These companies like Facebook and Google, they have a higher carbon intensity than a lot of countries.
Yeah.
And that's just from the data centers, that's just from the GPUs, that's just from running their business as usual. But that chat GPT model, that is a paid cost now. That's trained. We won't really have to train it again necessarily. I know they keep retraining it. That's debatable, the value in that. But the idea is that that training is going to happen anyway. Can we get to a payback point in carbon where we use the outcome of that model for more carbon savings than will cost training it? Is an
Yeah.
interesting question for me. Um, and I haven't yet seen a decent dissection of how viable that is. I might make one myself.
It is a really interesting point. Does the AI future cause a worse climate change impact? Or does does it speed it up because we're trying to build these AI models to make it better, and then we actually make it worse? I've not really heard that argument really. It's a really good point. I think I don't really think Skynet is going to be a thing. I think it will be more. Um, yeah, I don't think we'll have like Terminators walking around. I think what will happen if there was an evil AI, um, I think it'd be more attacking infrastructure that we would not survive that. I think that's what would happen. I don't believe Arnold Schwarzenegger's just going to turn up and start killing everybody. That won't happen. I think it's going to be more they'll attack the infrastructure and we'll have to create another super AI to attack that AI, and then we're in another problem because we've got two AIs killing each other and we're just or another simple thing where I remember is it Mo Gordat that was on a podcast once recently, and he says the biggest threat is that if the AI realizes that oxygen causes rust, so it will just get rid of oxygen out of our ozone layer. So it
Oh,
that way it would kill us because we're just a byproduct to save itself. But
yeah,
that's if we teach it that ethic. So yeah, it's really good. I'll send you a link to the podcast.
that's a
It was
fun
actually
one.
really, really
That
good.
is really interesting. Who, I
But
don't
yeah,
know
you're
who that
right.
person was. Who was
He's the
who is?
chief. He was a chief officer at Google,
Uh,
and was part of OpenAI, and yeah.
yeah,
So he's part of one of the people that you mentioned about signing the letter with Elon Musk and co. So yeah,
right.
he's
Yeah.
I believe
I
it's
love
Mo
El-
Gordat.
I
But
love Elon's pivot. By the way, we need to slow down AI. Oh, actually, no, I'm starting a new AI company. Fantastic. Like,
I
it's just like confused penguin. Just like no.
I I've been speaking to a few people that are interested in this sort of subject, and we called it straight away. He is asking people to slow down so he can build his own.
Yeah.
There is no reason why he's asking other people to slow down. It is a monetary gain. The guy is a serial entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
I don't think ethics are up there really when you're at
It,
that sort of level and that many billions. If you had ethics, you probably wouldn't have a couple of 100 billion in the bank. I
no.
mean, and you wouldn't buy Twitter as a vanity project. Those sorts of things are kind of slating Elon Musk here. I probably should roll that back in, but it's it's true, right? You wouldn't do
You're
these
not going to be
things
able to
if you
publish this on Twitter. They're going to
had.
bury
Yeah.
this. They're going to like
I'm going
shadow
on
ban you
Trump.
now.
I'm gonna go on Trump Social or whatever it's called, Trump Truth or something.
Oh
Go
yeah.
on.
Oh yeah. We got so far. How long did we get? 39 minutes until
Yeah,
either of
yeah,
those came up. We did so well.
we did, and I think I'm not going to talk about them anymore. Let's just cut those two out. Let's get rid of those guys. Now I've known you for a while, and like I mentioned at the beginning, you are the R guru. But now you've built your own product, and you're now an owner of a company, and you are learning new skills. I've got to ask you this. It's kind of like a killer question that I like, and it is: do you prefer R or Python now? Bearing in mind, our consortium may be listening.
Yeah, maybe
Just
listening.
throwing it in there.
Yeah. Well, they're not paying me right now. No. um,
Python.
uh, I I am very interested in both languages, and when I started NJI, um, my company, I obviously had this technical decision to make. It's just me. I could theoretically do it in either. And then I had this weird idea. It's like I could do it in Rust. Um, and then I looked at Rust and I looked exactly how hard it would be to do exactly what I needed to do. And it's like, I don't have time to get that good at Rust to make that work. So I need to be pragmatic about my decision. I need to make the decision that follows the following outcomes. I need to make the decision that says how it gives me the fastest build time with the least complexity, with the most batteries included tools. And the needs for NGI are a couple. So NGI needs to have various machine learning models. That can be done in R or Python. And in some of the cases I'm talking about here, R is informing Python about these machine learning tools. And so you see a lot of the open source packages that are emerging post pandas actually shout out people as this came from R. We've taken this concept and we've tweaked it, and now it does this.
Okay.
And that was also really valuable for me because that indicated two things: that what I liked about R, some of the functional sort of constructions that we have, some of the stuff that we sort of pioneered in R to do with ecosystems that work really nicely together, things to do with how the syntax around split, apply, combine actually gets written, is being adopted into Python as first class citizens. Like if you go through some of the pandas documentation, if you go through some of the other sort of machine library implementations, they go, we built this, and right at the bottom of the docs it says thanks to Project in R. And that was really good for me because it meant that I could not dual language my system, because the other requirement I have, as well as making an API machine learning, is I actually have to build like an actual like web application with a front end and a back end that does account management, that does a decent amount of sort of logging and automation of email sending, that does the mechanisms that you need to do ORM work, to do with building models in the database and representing them on the server and then in the client. And so Django doesn't have an equivalent in R. Shiny is good for things. It's good for building dashboards. It's good for putting a surface in front of someone inside usually a VPN or some kind of like server system where you're building an internal tool. Boom, smash, done. Off you go. It's closer for those people who are into Python to things like Gradio or Streamlit. It's a interface that gives buttons to people that allow them to control the model you've built in the language. But Django obviously has these other things that don't really have an equivalent in R. There's no equivalent to Django or Auth in R. We don't need it. We haven't had it. And so
Yeah.
that then led me to going, I can do everything in Python with a relatively comfortable tool set. And so NGAI is all Python. And that was the other thing. Yeah, I know.
Oof.
Sorry, our friends. Turn
He's,
traitor.
that hurt a little. That hurt me, Dave. I don't know about anybody else. That
Man, I'm so glad that I did this on my own because there's so many snotty tissues. I was just like hammering out the first part of the VM. It's like pip install Django, a little tear. um,
uh,
yeah. There's things that I've been doing in both languages. Like there's interesting things happening in R as well, and there's really interesting things happening in Rust. And while we're talking data science in languages, one of the things that helped me make this decision was Are We Learning Yet, which is a website based on the Rust language that says these are the machine learning goals that we have as a language. We need first class dealing with time series. We need first class dealing with random forest and decision trees. We need a first class data operations library. We need like an equivalent to pandas. We need an equivalent to scikit-learn. We need an equivalent
yeah.
to fable in the R world. We need an equivalent to implementation of profit, for instance. And one of the things that they are identifying is that Polars, banging library, Polars is in ENGI as the pandas equivalent because it's like fundamentally faster. It has R influenced syntax, but it is Python. I'm running it in Python, and instead of passing it to Cython, the C implementation that Pandas is built on, it passes it to Rust. I don't care, but it runs so much faster. And that's to
Mm.
do jobs like split, apply, combine. How do I apply the average over this group, splitting it by cohort? I have a data frame full of strings and I want them split at this particular location. It's the libraries do that work. And Polars, I'm really ranking as the tool to do that right now. And that came up in the hackathon we were doing with cats as well. We did a lot of us were working with Polars there. And yeah, if I could have, I would have done it in Rust, but it wasn't there yet.
Awesome. But art still has a good place, right? Art's got like a place in your heart, and you'll always
Yeah.
have it. It does have good use cases for solely data science
Yes.
stuff, right? It
Yeah.
is a statistical tool, whereas Python is built. It's more of a generalist tool, but it can
Absolutely.
focus more on,
Yeah.
you know, sort of like you said, the application side of things rather than your sole data sciencey statistical models.
And there's one thing that R is still doing better than Python, which I am using as a side effect of doing NGI, and that is what's called literate programming. So you have a program that needs to compile a document. You have to do some machine learning and some data processing on that for one person, like a company out of thousands, and you need to give them back a nice web page, a nice report, a nice sort of docx file. And what our studio have recently released is something called Quarto, which wraps around Jupyter, gives it publishing superpowers, and is also language agnostic like Jupyter is. So you can write a bit of R, you can write a bit of Python, you can write a bit of Julia, a bit of Rust, but it sort of gives it this extra level of polish. Whereas getting a Jupyter notebook into a customer's hands is probably a really bad idea. Like
Yeah,
it seems like that's the wrong thing to hand over to someone. Whereas handing
yeah,
them the output of a Quarto process, which is a nice PDF that has their logo at the top of it and says, "Dear sir, we have crunched your numbers and you are this in the red. I'm sorry." And then delivering that to like 15,000 people like
yeah.
that, Quarto is still perfect for that. And I've been using it to do my pitching and marketing. So I've been using that to build my websites. I've been using that to build the pitch decks that I've been writing. And I've been using that to do a few other things. And so Python, if you're listening, like you've got something free that's great from the R community again that is not getting enough attention.
Oh, that's awesome, man. But yeah, I think it was kind of a trick question, if you like, or a joke question at the end,
Yes,
just to
it
get
was.
get
Yeah,
the mind going a little bit. But I think they both have really good use cases and what they use for, and But there are loads of other languages out there. That you got Go, and you've got Rust, like you said, and I think these things are just gonna progress over time, and it's all good. So you can stay on the fence. It's fine.
I'm very,
Enjoy
very
that
happy
fence.
here on my picket, just sitting here, drinking tea and not picking a side.
Awesome, man. So, hey, look, this has been really fun, right? It's been great to speak to you again, and we've gone through some really awesome stuff. And I really like what your mindset is around data ethics. I think that is top class, Dave. And I do wish you all the best with NGAI, and I know it's going to be a success. You're a good bloke. So, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and
Thanks for having
yeah,
me. Yeah,
it's all
I
good,
look
man.
forward to seeing this in my and the rest of the stuff you're putting out. So you've got a few others floating around, right? You've
Yeah,
got
yeah, we are. It's going full steam ahead at the moment with doing podcasts, and we'll see how many we get out and see what reception we get.